He didn't want me there. That much was clear from the silence on the other end of the line. "It's a big venue, Mom," he said at last, dragging out the words like an apology he didn't believe in. "We'll have to see if there's room. Room. For me. At my own grandson's graduation." I stared at the phone long after he hung up. The blue screen reflected in the glass of the china cabinet behind me, where our old wedding photo still stood. George in his uniform, me in a borrowed dress, holding his arm like I held my breath back then. I remember his voice, calm and steady. "Elsie, don't let anyone tell you where your place is. You choose it yourself." He was gone now 15 years, but I still talk to him, especially on days like this, when our son sounded more like a stranger than family. I set the phone down and walked to the mirror. My reflection startled me. Wrinkled, yes. Neck gone soft, shoulders narrower than I remembered. But the eyes, they were the same. The same pale gray George used to say, "We're stormy when you're mad, and still waters when you're sad." Today they were tired, but not weak. In 3 days, my grandson Owen would walk the stage at the prestigious Winston Academy in Massachusetts. He'd be wearing a dark robe and one of those square caps, and the school orchestra would play some solemn tune. There would be photos, speeches, applause. His name would be called, and he'd walk out into his future. A future I helped pay for. It had been me who covered the private school tuition when their business went under. Me who paid for the violin lessons, the braces, the college test prep. When his parents said, "We just can't swing it this month," it was always me who stepped in. Quietly. Willingly. Not for praise, but because I loved him. But somewhere along the way, I became a shadow in their house. The woman with the old lady perfume, the unfashionable sweaters, the habit of asking too many questions. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being family and became a potential embarrassment. I opened the closet and looked at my dresses. Some were too tight in the waist, others too loose in the shoulders. I pulled out the navy one, not new but clean, with a little brooch, a small silver lily. It looked almost elegant. I held it up to my body and looked again in the mirror. Stormy eyes, steady shoulders, thin wrists. Maybe not elegant, I thought, but real. I'd go to that graduation, whether they saved me a seat or not, whether they smiled when they saw me or looked away. I'd be there, because I had been there, for every scraped knee, every school concert, every time Owen stayed the weekend when his parents went skiing or needed a break. I was not some guest to be tolerated. I was his grandmother, and I'd find my place, even if I had to bring my own chair. I called him again the next morning, hoping that maybe he'd changed his mind overnight, that maybe he'd say, "Of course, Mom, you'll sit with us. You're family." But instead, he let it ring 4 times and sent me to voicemail. No message. No call back. By lunchtime, I'd packed a small overnight bag. 2 dresses, my toothbrush, the cardigan I wore when the weather turned chilly in the evenings. It had begun to pill at the sleeves, but it was soft and smelled faintly of lavender. I added a book I wasn't really reading, something with a sunset on the cover, a story I already knew the end of. Then I took the envelope with the hotel voucher I'd printed myself. A modest place, 42 minutes from the school. Not the one the rest of the family was staying at. They hadn't offered to book me a room. I walked down to the bank to get some cash, just in case. Evelyn behind the counter smiled wide. "Going somewhere, Miss Elsie?" "Graduation," I said with a little smile. "My grandson's." Oh, how wonderful, she beamed. Are you staying with your son? I shook my head. No, I'll manage. She must have heard something in my voice because the cheer in her face faded just a little. She handed me my cash in a quiet bundle. Well, I hope it's a lovely trip. I hoped so too, but I wasn't sure anymore. By the time I got home, a message had arrived from Marianne, my daughter-in-law. It was short, almost pleasant in tone, which only made it worse. Hi, Elsie. Just checking in about Friday. Wanted to kindly remind you that seating is limited, and the school asks families to keep things simple. It's Owen's big day, and we'd like everything to go smoothly. Thanks for understanding. No greeting. No, can't wait to see you. No offer to meet for coffee or ride together. Just a warning dressed up in pleasantries. I stared at the screen until it went black in my hand. Thanks for understanding. I didn't. That evening, I opened the drawer by my bed, the one George had kept his wallet in, long after he stopped carrying one. I still kept a few of his things there. A pair of cufflinks, a handkerchief with our initials stitched in, a Father's Day card Owen had made when he was 6, a lopsided drawing of his granddad, and a message scrawled in green crayon. You're the best. I love you, Papa G. I traced the letters with my finger. Had he forgotten? Or had they made him forget? I thought about calling him directly. I had his number, though he barely answered these days, now that he was almost 18 and always so busy. But what would I say? Owen, is it all right if I come? Will I embarrass you? No, I wouldn't put him in that position, and I wouldn't beg. I looked at the suitcase by the door. I thought about canceling the trip, staying home, watching the live stream they said would be available. But I already knew what that would feel like. Sitting alone at my kitchen table, watching strangers applaud while I clapped into silence. And something in me recoiled at the thought. I didn't survive 60 years of marriage, a cancer scare, the loss of 2 siblings, and running a household on one income to shrink from a folding chair at a high school ceremony. I was going. Not for them. For me. The motel sat off the highway, tucked behind a row of gas stations and an old diner with a flickering neon sign that read, All-Day Breakfast. The woman at the front desk had thinning hair and bright pink lipstick. She didn't ask why I was there, just handed me the key, said room 12 round the back, and slid a map across the counter with a highlighter circle around the vending machine. Inside, the room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old curtains. There was a small TV bolted to the wall and 2 mismatched chairs, one plastic, one sagging with age. I set my bag down on the dresser, smoothed the bedspread, and sat for a moment, listening to the silence. No one knew I was here, and no one would ask. I called my son again. This time, I told myself, just to let him know I'd arrived safely. He didn't answer. I left a message. Hi, it's me. I'm in town. Let me know where I should meet you tomorrow. I'll be early, so whatever works. I didn't add the rest, if there's even a place for me. At 6, I walked to the diner, ordered meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and coffee. A young waitress called me sweetheart, and I tipped her extra for it. Across the room, a family sat in a booth. 2 little boys in matching sweatshirts, their mother cutting pancakes into small squares, their father pretending to steal bites and make them giggle. I watched them for longer than I meant to. Watched the woman stroke her son's hair. Watched the father's rough hands rest on the table, steady, without a phone in them. I wondered if my son had ever looked at me like that, with warmth, with gratitude. Or had he already begun turning away, even when he was a boy. That night, back in the motel, I laid out my dress. I used a towel to steam out the few wrinkles and hung it from the curtain rod. Then I took out the brooch, a simple pearl in a silver frame. George had given it to me the year Owen was born. "You're a grandmother now," he'd said. "You get to sparkle a little." It caught the light, just barely. I pinned it on the dress and stepped back. It wasn't new. It wasn't fashionable. But it was me. I climbed into bed fully aware I wouldn't sleep much. The pillow was too flat, the room too quiet, and my mind too loud. I thought about all the things I could have done differently. Maybe if I'd moved closer when they bought that new house. Maybe if I hadn't refused to invest in that strange tech startup my son's friend was pitching. Maybe if I'd been the kind of grandmother who baked cookies every week or hosted perfect little brunches with doilies and mimosas. Maybe then I'd still be welcome. Maybe then I'd be good enough. But I knew that was a lie. I had said yes more times than I could count. Paid for things I couldn't afford, bit my tongue when Marianne rolled her eyes, smiled through birthday dinners where no one asked how I was doing. I'd said yes, and yes, and yes. And still, somehow, I was too much. Too plain, too loud, too me. At 3:17 a.m., I opened my phone. Still no response from my son, no call, no text. But there was one message, from Owen, sent at midnight. "Hey, Grandma, hope you got here okay. Big day tomorrow. Love you." That was it. Just a single line, but I read it 3 times. Then I turned the screen off and held the phone to my chest like a hand I could almost feel again. The next morning, I waited. I woke at 6, showered, dressed, and sat at the edge of the bed, hands folded, purse packed. The ceremony was scheduled for 10. I didn't want to be late, didn't want to rush. But I also didn't want to arrive too early and stand around like some misplaced coat. By 7:15, I called again. My son picked up this time, his voice groggy. "Yeah? It's me," I said. "I'm ready. Where should I meet you all?" A pause. Sheets rustled. I could picture him sitting up, rubbing his eyes, checking the time. "Elsie," he sighed. "We're already in town, at the campus hotel. It's complicated. Parking's a mess. I'm not sure there'll be room in our car." "That's all right," I said quickly. "I've got a taxi number. I'll meet you there." Another pause. "Well, actually, we were planning to go in early with Owen. He has to be backstage by 9, so..." I waited. "Maybe it's better if you just find a seat inside. General seating opens at 9:30. It's all first come, first serve." "I see." He cleared his throat. "You've got the address, right?" "Yes." "Good. We'll see you afterwards, I guess." "Sure." He didn't say goodbye, just hung up. I sat for another minute, staring at the blank screen. Then I stood, reached for my coat, and checked my reflection one last time. The brooch gleamed softly at the collar of my navy dress. My shoes, polished the night before, looked sturdy and sensible. My hair, thinner now than it once was pulled back with quiet care. I looked like someone's grandmother, but not apparently someone's guest. The taxi dropped me off outside the academy gates. A security guard waved cars forward, directing parents to designated drop-off zones. Banners hung from the lampposts. "Class of 2025, congratulations." The campus was grand. All brick buildings and tall windows, manicured lawns, and ivy crawling like ambition up the old stone walls. Families strolled across the quad in their best clothes. Fathers in suits, mothers in silk. Some had brought bouquets. Others clutched cameras. Laughter floated across the courtyard like music I used to know the words to. No one greeted me. I followed the signs toward the auditorium. There was a registration desk for distinguished guests, another for board members and donors. I passed them both. Inside the auditorium, rows and rows of folding chairs were set up, each neatly labeled. First rows, faculty. Second, students. Third, family seating. Behind that, general audience. A young woman in a headset approached me. "Are you with the Thorne family?" she asked, reading from a list. "Yes," I said, hopeful. She looked down. "I believe they're seated in Section B, front left, reserved row. But that's for immediate family only." I'm his grandmother. Her smile tightened. "I understand, but that row is full." I nodded. She gestured toward the middle. "You're welcome to sit anywhere behind the reserved signs. It's all open seating past that point." "Thank you." I found a chair 6 rows back. Not terrible, but far enough to be forgotten. I sat, smoothed my skirt, and folded my hands in my lap. Around me, the room began to fill. Laughter, hugs, whispered conversations. Someone passed me holding a coffee and said, "Excuse me, ma'am," like I was the coat rack. From my seat, I could just barely make out the section marked Thorne. I saw Marianne's blonde hair, her pearl earrings. I saw my son, straight-backed in a blue suit. And next to them, Owen, his cap in his lap, gown unzipped at the neck, long limbs folded awkwardly into the tiny chair. His eyes scanned the crowd. Then, for just a moment, they met mine. He didn't smile, but he didn't look away. The auditorium lights dimmed at exactly 10. A hush fell across the room as the orchestra began to play. Some stately tune with too many violins, the kind that always feels a bit too proud for children wearing oversized robes. I sat still, my purse tucked between my feet. Around me, people adjusted ties, smoothed skirts, murmured names under their breath as they read the printed programs. I hadn't been given one. The usher must have missed me, or maybe they'd run out. On the stage, the headmaster appeared. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of polished voice that only private academies seem to produce. He welcomed the families, thanked the board, and said something about legacy and leadership and the promise of this next generation. I tried to listen, but my eyes kept drifting toward Section B. There they were. My family. Owen sat between his parents, head slightly down, hands clasped in his lap. Marianne leaned over and whispered something into his ear. He nodded, just once, quickly, but didn't smile. I couldn't see my son's face. Only the back of his neck stiff and unmoving, as though he was willing the morning to pass quickly, as though he were bracing for something. My eyes moved over the row. Every seat was full, not even one left open, just in case. After the opening remarks, the student speeches began. A girl with perfect posture and perfect diction talked about ambition and community. A boy followed, quoting something in Latin. The crowd laughed in all the right places, clapped dutifully at the end. Then came the roll call. One by one, graduates crossed the stage. The applause rose and fell like waves, louder for some names. The children of donors, the ones headed to Ivy Leagues, the ones whose mothers wore diamonds the size of raisins. When they called Owen's name, I sat up straighter. "Owen Matthew Thorne," the dean announced. My grandson stood. He walked calmly to the edge of the stage, shook hands with the principal, accepted his diploma with a short bow. The applause was loud, not wild, but warm, proud. Marianne was already dabbing at her eyes. My son clapped, then leaned toward his wife and whispered something with a smirk. I saw Owen glance their way, then down at the diploma in his hands. He didn't return to his seat. Instead, he stayed at the microphone. There was a moment of pause, the kind that ripples across a room like someone dropped a fork at a funeral. Then he cleared his throat. "I wasn't supposed to speak today," he began. The headmaster looked puzzled. So did his parents. But I asked if I could, because I need to say something. He held the microphone with both hands, steady, despite the silence pressing in from all sides. "There are a lot of people I could thank. Teachers, friends, my parents, of course." His voice wavered slightly on the word, "of course," and I saw Marianne shift in her seat. "But none of this," he continued, "none of it would have happened without my grandmother." My breath caught. I didn't move. She helped pay for this school. She drove me to violin when no one else could. She made me lunches when I stayed with her and talked me down when I failed my first test. She told me I was smart long before I ever believed it myself. I saw Marianne's smile freeze. My son's mouth tightened. "And today, she's sitting somewhere in this crowd," Owen said. "Not in the front row, not where she should be. But I want her to know that I see her, and I love her, and I wouldn't be here without her." He paused, then looked right at me. "Grandma Elsie, will you come up here?" A sound escaped me. Not quite a sob, not quite a laugh. Something in between. All eyes turned, heads swiveled, people whispered, and I stood. My knees weren't as fast as they used to be, but I walked steady, purse still in my hand, brooch gleaming faintly in the stage light. Owen met me at the steps, held out his arm like a gentleman in an old film, and together we walked across the stage, to the front, to the place they said I didn't belong. The room didn't know what to do with itself. Applause began, polite at first, hesitant, like a question. Is this part of the program? Then, as Owen gently guided me toward the podium, the clapping grew louder. Not a roar, but something deeper, something real. I didn't look at Marianne. I didn't need to. I could feel her bristle from across the room, a heat without fire. My son sat motionless, his hands flat on his knees, as if by staying still, he could disappear. But I wasn't looking for them. I looked at Owen. He stood beside me, tall and proud, his hand still lightly on my elbow. His face, so often pulled tight with teenage indifference, was open now, and full of something that almost broke me. Not pity, not duty, but love. Owen turned back to the microphone. "I know this isn't normal," he said, glancing at the headmaster, who looked equal parts confused and amused. "But sometimes what's right isn't what's expected." Laughter rippled through the crowd, the good kind. He nodded toward me. "This is Elsie Campbell. She's my grandmother. And today, she's my guest of honor." He stepped back and gestured to the folding chair behind him, one set up for a faculty member who hadn't shown, a seat on the stage, in full view of the audience, of the family section, of everyone. My legs felt shaky, but I moved forward. He pulled the chair out for me, and I sat, knees together, purse on my lap, hands folded over the worn leather. The stage lights made everything glow. I looked out over the sea of faces and tried not to cry, but inside me, something settled. Something long out of place had finally returned to where it belonged. They let the moment hang, awkward but lovely, before the principal leaned in, whispered something to Owen, and the ceremony resumed. Student after student filed across the stage, clapping continued. The orchestra played another too long piece. But everything felt shifted. Every so often, a student would glance at me as they passed, a respectful nod, a quick smile, as if Owen's gesture had unlocked something that everyone recognized but never dared say. We forget the ones who hold us up. From my seat, I could see everything. Marianne sat like a statue, her arms crossed tightly, jaw clenched. My son, beside her, glanced up at me once, only once, and then stared at his shoes. But I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel smug. I felt like myself, seen, named, claimed. When the final student walked across the stage and the ceremony closed, the crowd rose to its feet. The graduates flung their caps in the air, a blizzard of black fabric and tassels. The orchestra swelled. Confetti cannons popped at the back of the hall, releasing a gentle shower of gold and blue strips. I stood slowly, Owen beside me. He leaned down and said, "You doing okay?" I nodded. My voice didn't trust itself just yet. "Good," he said. "You were amazing." I smiled at him, placed my hand on his cheek for the briefest moment. "So were you." The faculty began to file out, shaking hands, posing for photos. Families crowded the aisles, calling names, waving bouquets. A line began to form near the edge of the stage. Students taking pictures, friends hugging, proud parents holding phones high. I turned, meaning to slip away quietly, but someone stopped me. A woman I didn't know, elegant silver hair and a sleek chignon, pearls around her neck, reached out and touched my arm. "Excuse me," she said. "I just wanted to say what your grandson did. It was the most beautiful thing I've seen at one of these in years." Her voice trembled slightly. "I have 3 grandsons. Not one of them even called me this week." I nodded, unable to speak. Then another hand. A young man. "That was my mom up there with the camera," he said sheepishly. "She cried when he called you up. Said every grandmother deserves that." And then someone else. A teacher. A girl in cap and gown. A man who worked security and said, "Ma'am, you raised him right." Each face blurred into the next. Not praise, not exactly. But recognition. Connection. Like somehow, in standing there, I'd given something back to the room that none of them had known they needed. I'd shown up. And it had mattered. I finally made it off the stage with Owen's help, down the narrow stairs at the side. My knees ached with each step, but I didn't mind. Pain is a small price for dignity, and I'd waited long enough to feel it again. Outside the auditorium, the lawn buzzed with the usual post-ceremony chaos. Photos in every direction, mothers smoothing collars, fathers adjusting ties, graduates laughing too loud, like they'd been holding their breath for 4 years and could finally exhale. I stood to the side, near a bench under a tree, clutching my purse with both hands. The program, someone had handed me one after the ceremony, peeked out of the top. On the front, Winston Academy Commencement, Class of 2025. A keepsake. I'd press it into my scrapbook later, between Owen's kindergarten drawing and the hospital bracelet from the day he was born. Marianne found me first. Her heels clicked across the pavement like an accusation. "Elise," she said, smiling, but only with her teeth. "There you are." I turned, slowly. Here I am. She brushed a strand of hair from her face, though the wind hadn't moved it. "What happened in there? That wasn't planned." I gathered. "We were just trying to keep things organized," she added quickly, voice dropping a note lower. "There was a schedule, a structure. It wasn't personal." "I see." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You have to understand how important this day was to Owen. To us. Everything needed to go smoothly." And yet, I said gently, it did. That silenced her. She shifted her weight. You know how teenagers are. Impulsive. He didn't even tell us he'd planned to speak. That makes it all the more meaningful, don't you think? Her mouth opened, then closed. I could see her weighing responses, debating whether to continue the performance or drop the mask altogether. She chose the middle. I just wish you'd told us you were going to make a moment of it. I didn't, I said simply. Owen did. Marianne gave a tight laugh. Well, he certainly made an impression. I nodded. Yes, he did. Behind her, I spotted my son, David. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, eyes on me. He hadn't approached yet, not even when I walked on stage, not when the auditorium filled with applause. Not when Owen said my name into the microphone like a prayer. He looked tired, not physically, but the way men do when they've run out of excuses and know they'll have to face something they've long avoided. Marianne followed my gaze and touched his arm. David, come say something to your mother. He didn't move. She pressed again. David. At last, he came forward. Not quickly, not with joy, but because he had no other choice. Mom, he said. I waited. He cleared his throat. That was unexpected. I imagine it was. Silence stretched between us, then. You really should have let us know you were coming. I did, I said. 3 times. He blinked. And when I asked where to meet you, you said you'd see if there was room. I met his eyes. There wasn't. His mouth opened, ready with something, a deflection, an apology wrapped in self-defense. But he thought better of it. Said nothing. Marianne stepped in again. We're having lunch, a small thing, just a few families. You're welcome to join us. The word welcome hung there, bitter as aspirin. I have plans, I said. That surprised her. Oh? Yes, I said calmly. A friend invited me for tea. Someone who actually seemed pleased to see me. David looked down. Marianne tried again, this time with a tone she must have thought sounded conciliatory. Elsie, no one meant to hurt you. No, I said. That's the problem. No one meant anything at all. I turned to leave. I didn't need a ride. I didn't need their table. I'd had my moment. No, I'd earned it. And I wasn't about to let them fold it back into silence just to keep things tidy. Behind me, I heard Owen calling my name. But it wasn't panic or apology in his voice. It was joy. Grandma! Owen jogged up to me across the lawn, his gown flapping at his sides, cap tucked under one arm like a football. A dozen eyes turned, but he didn't notice or didn't care. His smile was easy, open, proud. He reached me, breathless, and without hesitation wrapped his arms around me in a hug that was real. Not performative, not rushed, not polite. Real. You okay? He asked, pulling back just enough to look me in the face. I am now. He grinned. I thought they might try to talk you out of it. They tried. He laughed, full, warm, typical. We sat down together on a bench beneath the large oak tree near the auditorium. It gave us a little privacy, though we were still within view of the clusters of students and families taking photos, drinking lemonade, clapping each other on the back. The crowd thinned a little now, most people already shifting from ceremony to celebration. They're furious, aren't they? He asked, not even bothering to disguise the amusement in his voice. Your mother is composing some kind of historical rewrite as we speak. Your father can't look me in the eye. Owen rolled his eyes. She told me this morning not to make things complicated. Can you believe that? On my day? I shook my head. I thought about not going through with it, he admitted, saying nothing, just letting it all pass and thanking you after. That would have been enough. No, he said, serious now. No, it wouldn't have. He looked down at his hands, long and steady, the nails clean and filed. A violinist's hands. I've watched them treat you like you were, I don't know, decoration, like a background character in your own family. And I hated it. Every time. My throat tightened. You never said anything, I whispered. I didn't know how, he said. When I was younger, I didn't even realize what was happening. But as I got older, it just felt wrong. And when you texted me that you were coming, and I saw you sitting all the way back in the general seats, I swear, something in me just snapped. I reached over and took his hand. Do you know, I said quietly, that was the first time I'd heard my name spoken with pride in years? He squeezed my fingers. We sat there in silence for a while. The sun had begun to warm the grass beneath our feet. Somewhere to our left, a woman laughed too loud. A speaker crackled near the lemonade table with a playlist of soft piano music, elegant but distant. Owen pulled something from his pocket. I was going to wait until after lunch, he said, but I don't want to give them the satisfaction of pretending this didn't happen. He held out a small envelope. Plain, my name written across the front in his slanted handwriting. What's this? Just open it. Inside was a letter. A single sheet of heavy paper, folded once. I unfolded it and read in silence. His words were careful, unpolished but honest. He thanked me, not just for the money, not just for the rides or the help or the snacks, but for being a place of calm, a voice of reason, the one person he could be completely himself around. He wrote that he was going to college in the fall and that he planned to write every week. He'd already set a reminder on his phone. At the bottom, his signature. Then, in all capital letters, "You are not forgotten." I held the letter for a long time. Pressed it to my chest. I'm going to frame this, I said, blinking back tears. He smiled. That boyish, lopsided grin I remembered from years ago when he'd lost his first tooth and asked if I'd still love him with a hole in his smile. Good, he said. I meant every word. I stood slowly. I should go. You don't want to come with us? To lunch with people who wished I'd stayed invisible? I smiled gently. No, my dear. I've had enough pretending for one day. He nodded, not arguing. But you go, I added. Celebrate. You earned it. He paused. Can I see you later? After dinner? Just you and me? I touched his cheek. Of course you can. As I walked away from the campus, heels clicking softly on the stone path, I felt something light inside me. Like a door had finally swung open, letting in air that had been stale for years. I wasn't anyone's burden. I wasn't a mistake to be hidden. I was someone's honor. Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed and removed my shoes slowly, one hand braced on my knee, the other steadying the heel. The arches of my feet pulsed with dull ache. Not from the walk, not from the standing, but from the years. The navy dress still hung neatly on me, brooch in place. I hadn't changed out of it yet. Somehow, I didn't want to. Not just because it was one of the few nice things I owned, but because today, in it, I had been seen. I lay back carefully on the thin bedspread, staring at the ceiling with its faint watermark near the light fixture, and listened to the hum of the air conditioner. The room was small, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like space I owned. Not borrowed, not tolerated. I thought about calling someone. Maybe Darlene, my neighbor back home who always asked about Owen. Always wanted to know how that sweet boy of yours was doing. She would have cried hearing about today, but I didn't want to speak yet. I wanted to stay in this silence, in this glow, just a little longer. On the nightstand, I placed the envelope from Owen. I smoothed it flat with my palm, as if it were something sacred, and in a way, it was. You are not forgotten. 4 words that wrapped themselves around the sorest parts of me. The phone buzzed once, then again. I sat up, slowly, and reached for it. David. I stared at the name for a few seconds, then tapped to open the message. Mom, can we talk? Call me when you can. I didn't answer. Not yet. A second buzz came almost immediately. That wasn't fair, what Owen did. He should have talked to us first. I raised an eyebrow. So that was the angle. Not we're sorry. Not you mattered. Just the disruption of order. The fact that something had happened outside of their control. I didn't respond. Instead, I scrolled to the top of the screen, found Owen's number, and typed a short reply. I read your letter 3 times. It's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever written me. A minute later, the 3 little dots appeared. He was typing. I meant every word, Grandma. Today felt right. I smiled, tapped back a heart, and then, on instinct, opened my camera. I looked tired, yes. Lines at the corners of my eyes, my hair slightly frizzed from the humidity, lipstick long faded. But I took the picture anyway. Me, in my navy dress with Owen's envelope held gently in my hands. And I sent it to him. Proof of life. Proof of pride. Almost instantly, a photo came back. Owen, sitting on the steps outside the lunch venue, suit jacket off, tie loosened, his graduation cap perched on his knee. Wish you were here instead of them. Still can't believe they tried to pretend you weren't coming. I hesitated before replying. Then, they've been pretending a long time. I just stopped letting them. He didn't respond right away. And that was fine. Some silences don't need filling. I stood up, finally, and changed out of the dress. Carefully, folding it over a hanger. I hung it up on the curtain rod again, like it belonged there, like it had earned its place. Then I made myself a cup of tea from the motel's sad little offering, a single sachet of black tea and a styrofoam cup. Still, I sipped it slowly, like it was poured from a silver teapot in a grand hall. Outside, the parking lot buzzed with a few cars coming and going. A family 2 doors down laughed too loudly. Somewhere, a child banged on a soda machine with both fists, and I sat there, calm, quiet, real. This was not a victory lap. This was a return to myself. I didn't expect the knock. It came soft but quick, like someone trying to pretend it wasn't urgent. I looked through the peephole and saw David standing there alone, hands in his pockets, suit jacket draped awkwardly over one arm, like he didn't know what to do with it. For a moment, I considered not opening the door, just letting him stand there with his rehearsed speech and let the silence do all the talking for me. But something in me, not forgiveness, not yet, but curiosity, reached for the lock. He looked up when the door opened, startled, like he wasn't sure I'd answer. "Hi," he said. "Hi." He shifted his weight, glanced over his shoulder at the parking lot. "Can I come in?" I stepped back just enough. The room felt smaller with him inside. He didn't sit, just hovered near the little round table, eyes roaming the place like he didn't know how to be still. "I saw the picture," he said finally, nodding toward my phone on the nightstand. "Owen showed me." I didn't say anything. "He's upset," he added. With us. With everything. Good. David blinked. I figured you'd still be angry. I'm not angry, I said quietly. I'm disappointed, which frankly is worse. He looked down. For months now, I continued, you and Marianne have found creative ways to exclude me. Polite phrases, soft redirections, making me feel like I was being difficult when all I ever did was show up. It wasn't like that. No? I asked. Then tell me what it was like. He rubbed his forehead. Marianne she has a certain image of how things should be. She wants things to look polished. She's always worried about judgment. Whose judgment? Everyone's. And mine doesn't count? He didn't answer. I changed Owen's diapers, I said, not out of sentimentality, but as a simple fact. I took him to the ER when he split his chin. I sat in folding chairs for violin recitals. I paid for things when you both said you couldn't. I was there when it was hard, not just when it was photogenic. His face tightened. You think I don't know that? I think you've forgotten what it means. He sat down, finally, hands folded between his knees like a schoolboy. I didn't want it to turn out like this, he said. Did you want anything at all? I asked, voice low. Or did you just want me to stay quiet and convenient? He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something behind the adult facade. That boy who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares, asking if I thought monsters could hear prayers. I'm sorry, he said. I believed him. But sorry, as I'd learned, doesn't undo silence. It doesn't refill the empty chairs at holidays or erase the ache of being left out on purpose. What now? He asked. That's up to you, I said. I've made my peace. I'm not chasing anyone anymore. He nodded slowly. Will you come to dinner tonight? With you and Marianne? He hesitated. With Owen? I softened a little. That's different. We're not doing the big restaurant thing. Owen said he just wants pizza, real pizza, nothing fancy. I like that boy, I said. David smiled, faint and weary. He likes you too. He stood. I'll text you the address. 7 okay? I nodded. At the door, he paused. You really looked proud today. I was, I said. And not just of him. He nodded once more and left. When the door clicked shut, I didn't collapse into tears. I didn't sit down in a daze. I didn't even sigh. I just stood for a moment, steady, and thought, it's about time he saw me clearly. The pizza place was nothing special, which is what made it perfect. A corner joint with checkered tablecloths, faded photos on the walls, and the smell of garlic so thick it settled into your clothes before you even sat down. A place where no one tried to impress anyone, where napkins came in a tin holder and soda was served in tall, sweaty plastic cups. I arrived at 6:55, not early enough to look desperate, not late enough to be inconvenient. Owen waved from the booth near the window. He was already halfway through a slice, grease shining on his fingertips. He looked happy, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen since he was a child sprawled out on my living room rug, coloring dinosaurs and asking if he could stay for just one more night. David was there too, sitting stiffly across from him, a paper plate untouched in front of him. No Marianne. Good. When I slid into the booth next to Owen, he grinned. I told them you'd show. I like being predictable, I said. He pushed a slice toward me. Mushroom and olive, your favorite. I raised an eyebrow. You remembered. I remember everything. David cleared his throat. Glad you made it, Mom. I nodded, but didn't offer anything else. I wasn't going to smooth this over for him. Owen filled the space easily. He told me about the ceremony again, how the girl next to him had whispered, "You're a legend," after I joined him on stage, how one of the teachers cried, how the headmaster looked like he didn't know whether to clap or faint. "You really made the day," he said, chewing thoughtfully. "Not just for me, for a lot of people. I didn't do anything. You showed up." He said it like that was everything, and maybe it was. We talked for an hour about college plans, about whether he should keep playing violin or try something new. He told me about a girl he liked, not Audrey, someone else, and how he wasn't sure what to say to her. I gave him the advice George once gave David. Don't try to be clever, just be kind. It lasts longer. He nodded like it was gospel. It felt like family again. Real family, not performance, not obligation. About halfway through the meal, David spoke. "I want to make something clear," he said, eyes on his plate. "I didn't ask Owen to do what he did. I didn't know." "I know," I said, "but I'm glad he did." I looked at him. For once, he didn't flinch. He went on. "You're right about how we've treated you. I don't think I saw it. Or maybe I didn't want to. It was easier to keep everything neat, controlled. Marianne?" He trailed off, then started again. "She's not cruel. She just likes things curated. And you don't curate well." I laughed, a small sound. "I'll take that as a compliment." He smiled, a little sad. "You should." Then quietly, "I'm sorry." There it was again. The same words as before, but now without the echo of excuse. "I believe you," I said, "but I'm not coming back to how things were." "I wouldn't ask you to." Owen looked between us, then said, "Can I say something?" "Of course." "I want you both in my life," he said simply. "Not on holidays. Not when someone needs money or a ride. For real. And I'm not going to choose between you." "You shouldn't have to," I said. David nodded. There it was. The table, the food, the still warm crust under my fingertips. All of it. Finally. Honest. When we stood to leave, David offered to walk me to the car. I declined. Not unkindly, just firmly. Outside, Owen hugged me again. Longer this time. "I'm proud of you," he said into my shoulder. I whispered back, "And I'm proud of you." As he turned to go, he called over his shoulder, "Save that letter. Frame it if you want." "I already have." He laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like something broken had been not just patched, but truly mended. Not perfect, not pretty, but real. I returned to the motel under a sky that had just begun to shift. That quiet hour when the sun starts to leave, but the streetlights haven't yet decided to take over. That thin, in-between light always reminded me of early motherhood. Half awake, half alone, carrying a child in one arm and fatigue in the other. The rooms smelled the same. Lemon cleaner and old AC. I slipped off my shoes and sat by the window, teacup in hand, though I hadn't boiled water yet. The hum of traffic floated up from the highway in soft, indistinct murmurs. Somewhere, a teenager laughed too hard at something dumb. Somewhere else, someone slammed a car door with too much force. Life. Ordinary. And persistent. I glanced over at the navy dress still hanging by the curtain rod, its folds slightly wrinkled again, the brooch catching the last of the daylight like it was winking at me. I didn't want to pack it just yet. Let it stay visible a little longer. Proof that I had gone, that I had stood there, that I had mattered. The phone buzzed. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. But I opened it anyway. "Mrs. Campbell, this is Audrey." Owen's friend from school. I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted to reach out. What you did today meant a lot to more people than you realize. I paused. I hadn't thought of Audrey since Owen mentioned her weeks ago. The library girl, the soft-spoken one. I hadn't even met her. Another message came in. My grandmother raised me too. She passed last year. I wish I'd done what Owen did. I didn't type right away. I let the words settle. Then I replied, "You still can. Speak their name. Live in a way that honors them. That's how they stay here." No response. But that was fine. Some messages weren't meant to be conversations. Some were simply acknowledgments in the dark. I see you. I remember. At 8:42, another buzz. This one I didn't expect. Marianne. I stared at the screen for a full minute before opening it. Elsie. I realize we haven't been fair. I'm not good at these things, but I want to try. I read it 3 times. Short. Careful. Vague. I didn't respond. Not yet. I didn't hate Marianne. I never had. But I had learned, over years of being quietly diminished, that not every apology needed a reception line. Some things weren't mine to fix. Instead, I pulled Owen's letter from the nightstand and unfolded it again. The creases were already softening. I ran my fingers along the lines, feeling the slight ridges where his pen had pressed deep into the paper. You are not forgotten. There was a time, not so long ago, when I would have traded every dollar in my savings just to hear those words, to feel like I still had a place. And now that I had them, I wasn't about to give them away again in exchange for politeness. At 9:15, a knock on the door. I frowned. David had gone. Owen was home. Marianne wouldn't. Another knock. Quieter this time. I opened the door to find a delivery man holding a white paper bag. Elsie Campbell? Yes. He smiled. Pizza. Paid in full. Note inside. He handed it over and walked away without waiting for a tip. Inside, I opened the bag. One small box, still warm. Inside, a single slice of mushroom and olive pizza. Folded neatly on top, a napkin, with a note written in thick black marker. For tomorrow, so you don't forget how loved you are. Oh. I set it down carefully, hand over my mouth, not crying, but so close it was like standing on the edge of a cliff with your eyes closed. I sat at the table. No fork, no ceremony, just me and one perfect slice of love, still warm from the oven. The next morning, I checked out of the motel at 9 hours sharp. The woman at the desk barely looked up. She asked, "Room 12?" And I nodded. She clicked a few buttons, handed me the receipt, and said, "Hope it was comfortable." It was, I said, and for the first time, I meant it. Out in the parking lot, the air was cool, not cold, just that early morning stillness before the heat settled in. My bag wasn't heavy. I'd brought only what I needed. I had learned in these later years how to travel light, not just with luggage, but with expectations. I placed the navy dress carefully in the suitcase, pressed the brooch into a soft pocket lined with a scarf, zipped everything up, and closed the trunk of the taxi. As we pulled away from the motel, I looked back once, just a quick glance. No nostalgia, no regret, just a quiet acknowledgement. This was the place where something shifted, where I stopped waiting for the world to make room and began claiming my space. At the train station, I bought a coffee, watery and burnt, but hot. I sat on a bench near the platform and sipped it slowly, watching strangers with too many bags and too many distractions hustle past like they were always 5 minutes late to the life they thought they'd planned. I felt still. That's the word that came to me. Not happy, not triumphant. Still, like a pond after the last ripple fades. The phone rang. Owen. Are you on the train yet? Not yet, I said. 10 minutes. Okay, I wanted to say thank you again. You already said it. Many times. Well, here's one more. Thank you for showing up. For everything. I know it wasn't easy. No, I said. But it was right. He was quiet for a beat. I wish I'd done it sooner. I smiled. You did it when it mattered. I've been thinking, he said. I want to come visit you this summer. Just me, not with my parents. Maybe for a few days? I felt the smile in my chest before it reached my face. You'd be more than welcome, I said. We'll eat badly and sleep in and play old music too loud. I love old music. I know you do. He paused again. Hey, Grandma? Yes? I meant what I wrote. Every word. I know, darling. A voice over the loudspeaker announced my train's arrival. I'd better go, I said. They'll be calling boarding in a minute. Okay. Text me when you get home? Of course. And Grandma? Yes? Next time someone tells you not to sit with them, don't. I won't, I said. I'll be on the stage. We laughed together, a sound I hadn't heard in years. Not just the laugh, but the together. After we hung up, I gathered my things and walked toward the platform. A woman about my age was standing near the tracks, fanning herself with a church bulletin. She smiled at me. Graduation weekend? She asked, nodding toward my suitcase and the cap still pinned to my coat from Owen's program. Yes, I said. Your grandson? I nodded. Mine too, she said. They grow up so fast, don't they? They do? She looked at me again, then said, You look proud. I am. We boarded the train together, and I found a window seat. As the engine began to hum beneath me, I thought about how easily we forget our place in the world, how we let others shrink us, slowly, politely, until we're just outlines of ourselves. But not today. Today I was solid, not loud, not showy, just real, just here. The train rocked gently beneath me, the way old memories do. Soft, rhythmic, not always comfortable, but never without purpose. I watched the landscape slide past in quiet colors. Barns and backyards, grocery stores and empty baseball fields. Little lives, each with their own aching silences and quiet victories. I thought of George. He would have loved what Owen did. He would have stood and clapped the loudest, maybe even whistled. That two-finger whistle I could never quite master. I could almost hear him saying it. That's our boy. The sun caught the edge of the window, warming my shoulder. I leaned into it. I didn't close my eyes. I wanted to stay awake for this part, the journey back. It felt important somehow. In the seat ahead of me, a young couple whispered to each other and passed a phone back and forth. I caught the flicker of a graduation photo. Someone else's triumph. I wasn't jealous. I was part of it. Not their story, but the feeling. The knowing. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Safe travels, Mom. Thank you for yesterday. I mean that. Short. Careful. But not empty. I considered my reply for a long time. Then typed, I hope this is the beginning, not the apology. A pause. Then, it is. That would have to be enough. Not a reset, but a reopening. A crack in a door that had been closed too long. When I arrived at the station back home, the platform was empty except for a teenager with headphones and an elderly man holding flowers with trembling hands. No one was waiting for me, and that was okay. I took a taxi home. The driver didn't make conversation, The ride was short, familiar. Every corner we turned had a memory attached. There's the pharmacy where I once lost my wallet, the cafe George and I used to go to on Sunday mornings, the little bookstore that always smelled like rain. When we reached my house, I sat in the cab for a moment before stepping out. Just one breath. In. Out. The air felt different. Not because the town had changed, it hadn't. But I had. Inside, everything was as I left it. Neat, quiet, a little too still. The framed photo of Owen at age 5 still sat on the mantel, gap-toothed and serious, holding a model rocket. I ran a finger along the frame, dust gathering on my skin. Then I walked to the dining table and laid out Owen's letter beside the envelope, smoothing the page flat. After that, I pulled out a small frame, one I'd bought years ago and never used, and slid the letter inside. It fit perfectly. I placed it on the bookshelf in the living room, eye level, not tucked away, not behind anything. Visible. That's where I'd keep it. I spent the evening doing small things, unpacking, washing the cup I left in the sink, feeding the neighbor's cat through the fence because he always came around dinner time. Ordinary motions, but each felt more solid than they had in years. And when I finally sat down, tea in hand, legs tucked beneath me, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like someone waiting to be included. I felt like someone who'd finally stopped asking for permission. Because that's what it was, really. All those years of trying to be softer, quieter, less visible, of waiting for invitations that never came, of swallowing slights like they were part of the meal. But no more. Owen's voice, steady, unshaken, still echoed in my ears. She's my guest of honor, not a guest in the room. The guest of honor. And now, in this quiet house, I knew I would never be invisible again. A week passed. Then 2. I didn't hear from Marianne. I didn't expect to. Some people only make space for you when the world insists on it. And even then, only for a moment. But David texted once more. Simple things. A photo of Owen helping him change a flat tire. A thinking of you on a Tuesday morning. Small repairs. Owen kept his promise. Every Sunday evening, like clockwork, a message arrived. Tried a new recipe. It was awful. I miss your grilled cheese. Started packing for college. Found that old comic book you gave me. I'm taking it. Guess what? The girl from the library texted me back. I told her about you. She said you sound like a movie character in the best way. I printed each message, taped them on the inside of a kitchen cabinet door, my own quiet gallery. Summer unfolded gently. No big events, no milestones. But peace. The kind that settles over you when you've stopped performing for a place at a table and started setting your own. I began baking again, nothing fancy, just old recipes. Banana bread, shortbread cookies. I gave a plate to the mailman who always smiled too wide, another to Darlene next door, who said, "It's good to see you glowing again." Glowing. Not quite the word I'd choose, but I understood the feeling she meant. I wasn't hiding anymore, not apologizing for existing, and it changed things. Not loud, but unmistakably. One afternoon, late in July, I heard footsteps on the porch. Owen, backpack slung over one shoulder, a bouquet of wildflowers in his hand. "No occasion," he said, grinning. "Just thought your vase looked empty." He stayed for 3 days. Slept in the guest room that still held his dinosaur sheets from when he was little. We cooked together, played cards, watched black and white movies on my old DVD player. He read me part of his college essay. I made him grilled cheese, just like before. Extra butter, crisp edges. We didn't talk much about the graduation, not directly, but it sat between us in the best way. Understood, shared, no longer sore. On his last night, as we sat on the porch, watching the sky turn the color of old peaches, he said, "You know, I'm not scared of leaving. I'm glad. But I was scared of losing this." I reached for his hand. "You won't. Not as long as you remember who you are." He looked over. "You mean me?" "I mean us." He nodded, and for a long moment we just sat there. No need to fill the air. No need to explain. The next morning, after I waved him off at the train station, I returned home to find one last note on the kitchen counter, folded in half, with my name on the front. Inside, "Thank you for teaching me what it means to stand up for someone, even when no one else will. I'll carry that with me. Always. Love, your honored guest." I stood in the kitchen for a long time with that note in my hand, the kettle whistling behind me like the applause I'd once thought I'd never hear. And I realized something. We wait so long for people to give us permission, to matter, to belong, to take up space. But sometimes, the most radical thing we can do, the most loving, the most true, is to give that permission to ourselves. So if you're reading this, if you've ever been told to sit quietly, to stay back, to not embarrass someone by being fully, honestly who you are, don't sit where they place you. Don't shrink. Stand. Stand all the way up. Because sometimes the seat they try to deny you is the one they end up building a stage around. If this story meant something to you, share it. We're not invisible, not anymore.